Hello and welcome to the Consumer Toolbox. I'm your host, Milagros Johnson, and I'm the Director of the Mayor's Office of Consumer Information in Springfield. We are a local consumer program funded by and working in cooperation with the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office. We serve consumers of Hampden County and parts of Worcester County. Our program's mission is to provide you, the consumer, with the necessary tools to make informed decisions. We strive to educate you on your consumer rights and prevent you from becoming a victim of a scam or fraud. Each month, we bring to you a local guest speaker who will share his or her expertise and further enrich you with consumer knowledge. Our motto is education is the best prevention, and the Consumer Toolbox gives you the tools you need to become a savvy consumer. I hope you stay and watch. Well, today I have with me a very special guest from the city of Springfield. He is Code Enforcement Commissioner of the city of Springfield. Again, it's Steve Desilets, and he's here to talk about code enforcement violations, the services the city provides to our residents of Springfield. And we're also going to talk about home improvement contractors and the violations that they often are seen in Springfield, correct?
Correct.
So thank you so much for joining me, Steve.
Thanks for having me today.
You're welcome. Again, it's a very important topic, I believe, and now with the season where people are still making home improvements, it's the rain season, and you may find that your office may be busy with consumers calling your office or inquiring about what the process is to request a permit for home improvement roofing repair perhaps, or they're getting leak in their home and the landlord is not responding to their needs. So that's why I asked you to be my guest on the Consumer Toolbox. So let me ask you first, if you can please give us a little bit of a background of your work and your role as the head person of the department.
Okay. I'm Steve Desilets, the Code Enforcement Commissioner for the City of Springfield. Basically, the Code Enforcement Department is a combination of a lot of different divisions. We have the building division, which is building, plumbing, electrical. We have our zoning enforcement division, which enforces the zoning in the city, signs, sign permits, the zoning board of appeals. I have my housing division, which is housing code enforcement, which most people think of for rental property, any residential occupied properties by tenants. That's the enforcement under the sanitary code. I actually have the weights and measures department in the city. Okay. So that takes care of, in general, anything that has any kind of weighing devices, scales, oil trucks, scanners, just about anything that's has anything to do with consumer buying, weighing. It's a consumer protection division. Basically, this time of the year, as you mentioned, a lot of people, and we've been really busy now with the economy picking up, with people doing a lot of renovations. So the permitting process comes into play with that when people start thinking about hiring a contractor or doing the work themselves, contacting the building department or going through the permit process. Generally, we urge people, if they're not sure what they're doing, to contact the building department. We can help walk them through what the requirements are. If they're hiring contractors, there's a lot of little steps they should be thinking about when they're hiring contractors.
And I hope you elaborate on those a little later, because they're very important steps that consumers need to be made aware of, and they don't know. And because you're the end source of the perfect person to have talk about what you hear and how consumers can avoid becoming a victim of a bad contractor. Yeah. So continue on. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. Just keep asking me the questions that you want.
Sure.
But most of it, we're consumer protection, and we're a mix of consumer protection and life safety. We really have a strong presence in life safety. A lot of things that people do every day of the week, they never really think of when they walk in a building. Does it have a sprinkler system? Is there a fire alarm system there? Is there safe means of egress? Are all the egresses opening, operable in case of a fire or in case of emergency to get out? That's where a large percentage of my inspectors spend their time on life safety inspections, along with code compliance. During the year, a lot of buildings that people frequent during the day, whether it's business establishments or restaurants, colleges, all your schools. We do yearly inspections on them for code compliance and life safety inspections to make sure they are certified every year.
Okay. Now, do you make random inspections? Or
Sometimes we do.
strictly- You do?
Sometimes we
Okay.
do. Usually a random inspection sometimes is a tip from the public. They've seen something, they're not sure about it, and we'll send out an inspector, sometimes a team of inspectors, depending on what the situation is.
So let's say a consumer is at a restaurant and notices that there are some violations, either goes to the restroom and there's no running water for them to wash their hands, or they notice an employee went to use the restroom and doesn't wash their hands, which often happens. Who should they contact? What is the procedure or the process for them to file a complaint with their office?
In Springfield, we're lucky we have a 311 system, so just about anything, any kind of complaint you may see within the city of Springfield, whether it's building, housing, plumbing, sanitary code, even everything from potholes to street access issues, you can call the 311, and they'll disseminate through your complaint what department it should go to, which is nice for the consumer. They're not calling this one and getting transferred to this one, So
And they're very busy because they're right next door to my office, and they're just as busy as your office is and my office. I mean, they're right next door, and they do a lot. I know they do.
Yeah, our 311 system.
And they're very effective, too.
Very effective. They do a great job. We're in constant contact with them. If something doesn't work right, we look at what didn't work right and try to vet it and to make sure that the consumer is always getting the fastest response they can to get to the right person.
So I understand correctly that they are the first contact. If they need
Yes.
to contact your office, they contact 311 and they file the complaint through them.
Other than police emergencies, 311 is for your basic emergencies that may have something to do with building or your common departments within the city of Springfield.
Okay, and if it's a very serious matter that requires immediate attention, is there a process for that? Do they know to red flag something that's urgent?
Yeah, generally, if it's anything with 311, if it's contacted through them, if it's nothing to do with police and fire, if they know it's an emergency that we may be working on life safety, as far as building, plumbing, electrical, we have protocols how they notify us right off the bat, and then we can vet the situation, whether or not we need to put a team of inspectors on it right away, or if it's something that may be perceived as an emergency, but maybe something we can get within that day or the next day.
Okay, that's great. So tell me some of the calls that they receive that are brought to your attention that are urgent, or the most common complaints that you hear about.
The most common ones this time of the year are going to be the no heat calls, no hot water, no electricity coming into the heating system, especially this time of the year. People are starting, it's cold in the morning, it's starting to get cold at nights. They turn the thermostat up, nothing happens.
Are you familiar with the moratorium, and do you know what the dates are when they should be coming on?
I'm not sure exactly the date, but my enforcement guys, through my housing division, there is through the sanitary code.
Yeah, and that's
a
available
certain
on the city
date,
website.
Yep, and they, the systems have to maintain a certain heating degree by the temperature of the day.
Okay. And are those complaints taken seriously? If, for example, let's say, going to have a cold winter as we did last year, and a landlord is not turning on the heat for the individual, for the tenant, do you send someone out right away?
Yeah, those are very serious. We take them serious.
do?
I mean, we never know the situation. So little kids, if there's elderly in there, so we always respond within 24 hours. Those are what we would consider our priority calls.
Okay. Because oftentimes they call our office, they see our consumer information, they contact our office, and then we direct them to your office, and they end up going to 311. So
Right.
in a sense, we do work hand in hand, the three of us, 311, your office, and our office. So
Yes.
because we do consumer protection in a different way, but we do. I refer to your office a lot, and most of the referrals that I make to your office are consumers that either have an issue with the landlord, and there are clear violations. Even though I'm not an inspector, I know what the violations are and what the responsibilities of a landlord are as well. But also the other concern that we get, the other consumers that we get are the ones that have an issue with a home improvement contractor, which we'll talk about a little later. But can you tell me a little bit more of what other types of complaints your office gets? So now we talked about the heat and the water. What are the types of?
On the housing division side, those are your general complaints, probably what we would consider most of the time are emergencies. Along that, we'll have sometimes a lot of complaints on emergency apartment, bootleg apartments we call them. Sometimes apartments are built into basements or third floors, and tenants will call and complain they don't have heat or they don't have proper means of egress, no smoke detection. So those are taken very seriously. Those are considered emergencies. On the general complaints, our day-to-day complaints for housing division, usually it's trash, debris, junk cars, parking on the front lawn, sometimes dumping on vacant lots. And most people, same thing, they can call the 311 if they have a complaint on something like that, whether it's in the neighborhood or something they even drive by. and that'll get vetted into our system. We have a computer system in our building division. It's a Acela, and we're all interconnected now between building, plumbing,
that's
electrical.
great.
Even our law departments has been connected into our system.
Now, would you encourage consumers to contact, or residents to contact your office, even if it's not a complaint, but it's simply a concern that they have?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, a lot of times people have concerns on stuff, and it turns out sometimes the picture's a lot bigger than what they even thought it was once we get in and investigate. You know, we've had complaints sometimes about, you know, obnoxious odors coming from a house, and we find out there's extreme animal hoarding or just hoarding issues on themselves and unsanitary conditions.
And you just recently had an issue, a couple of them in
And
Springfield.
we've had a few recent issues, yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to elaborate on, or you want to suggest to consumers as far as, or the residents of Springfield, as far as what other options they have, why should they contact your office, in other words?
Generally, it's one of those things where if you think there's an issue, there probably is. I mean, a lot of the stuff, when the codes and the master general laws a lot of them revolve around common sense. So if you see something, it's like somebody said, if you smell smoke, there may be fire, react on it. You know, so if you really think there's something there, by all means call us. And if there's not, it's no harm done.
Right.
You know, inspectors will go out there, they'll look at it. If there's nothing there on it, they mark it in the system as, you know, nothing found, no violations found, and we move on. It's not uncommon to sometimes find something that may have looked ugly, but it really wasn't necessarily a violation.
Now, the complaints that we often get against a landlord is a tenant files a complaint and says, you know, there's violations, and we've contacted code enforcement, and they've been out, and now they want to withhold the rent because the landlord hasn't made the necessary repairs that are either sanitary violations or health code violations. What is the next step for the consumer? Because we usually refer them back to your office.
Generally what happens, once we've gone out, we've done the inspection, there's notification that's sent out to the owner with a certain amount of time to make the repairs. If they fail to make the repairs, then we have the options of issuing fines. Or in some cases, if it's emergency, we can move to condemnation and move it right into court and ask the court to step in, either to relocate the tenants, force the landlord to relocate the tenants. In some cases, if it's severe enough, we can ask the court for a receiver, which a property receiver will step in and take over the property, make all the necessary repairs, and then foreclose on the property on their lien.
Okay. So consumers have a lot of remedies available to them through your office, and that's wonderful.
Yes.
That's wonderful. Now, does your office represent them at the hearing, or do they go to the hearing at housing court?
They go to the court housing. We represent the city itself on
Okay,
what
so-
violations we find. So then the tenants, whether or not they want their own attorneys or they're represented in court.
So the message to consumers here is that if there are violations found by code enforcement and the landlord doesn't act upon those, they still have remedies available.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
well, that's good to know.
that's where the city steps in. That's where us as enforcement, law enforcement officers step in to enforce the laws that are bound by all the public and the landlords.
Excuse me. Okay, that's good
That
to
even
know.
goes for the tenants too. Sometimes we'll step in a situation and the landlords may call us when they have tenants that may be damaging their property or causing problems.
And I'm glad
it
you
goes for
added
both
that,
ways.
because sometimes it's not the landlord that's the problem, it's the tenant.
Oh, we get a lot of it. Yes.
So they should also contact your office if they
Absolutely.
feel
The
like
landlords, it's a two-way street. You know, the laws are there for the landlords too, to protect their property. So in some cases, we know whether or not the tenants are using the code enforcement department against the landlords, but we go in and cite what we see. So whether it's a tenant responsibility or a landlord responsibility, it's spelled out underneath the sanitary code, and we hold the responsible party responsible for what they need to do.
Great. Let's hold the thought there for a moment. If you like what you heard, we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Hey, all the smoke alarms are here tonight.
I just want to say a couple of things about old Hal here. Let's remember, he's a hero and saved this house and family when he spotted that kitchen fire. You've had a good 10 years. We'll miss you, Hal. Hey, it's Hal's replacement. Check out that new technology.
Here, kid. You'll need a fresh one of these. Rookie.
Remember to replace any smoke alarm older than 10 years and replace the batteries in your alarms every year.
Welcome back to the Consumer Toolbox. I'm talking here today with Steve Desilets from the Springfield Code Enforcement. He's the commissioner. And we've been talking about the first segment of the show. We talked about code violations and what remedies consumers have or residents of Springfield have, and the services that the department offers them. And the second segment, I'm going to pick your brain, Steve, and we're going to talk about home improvement contractors and the violations that his office sees and that we hear about, and how consumers can protect themselves. So one of the things that I mentioned during the break is that we get a lot of complaints in our office, Steve, from consumers that had hired a contractor who they thought was a licensed, registered contractor. So can you explain to consumers why it's so important that when they hire a home improvement contractor, they make sure that all their T's are crossed and all their I's are dotted? Not just on the contract, but before they even have a contract before them.
Yeah, before any money gets written, any checks get written, we always tell people, do your homework. Take a look at the contractors, know who the contractor is that you're hiring. Look at least 2-3 different contractors. You know, look at who's the highest, who's the lowest, and maybe who's about in the middle. Be careful of the lowest one, you know, and sometimes be careful of the highest one, you know, but do your homework. Interview, maybe past projects, physically maybe go there and see them, talk to the people, take a look at it, find out what their performance is, you know, did they do the work on time? Was it up to what they considered quality for what they paid? Did they use the right products when they did it? Did they call for their inspections? Did they take their permits? Are they insured? You know, do they have their insurance and workman's comp if they have employees? These are all very important things. Be careful of high pressure sales. Some guys are very good at high pressure sales. You know, if you're asked to sign on the dotted line really quickly without being able to do your homework, just step away, you know.
You talked about the permit. Why is that so important? Because consumers don't realize that there must be a permit if there's going to be renovations made to their home. A new roof, new siding, new windows, correct?
Right,
and
correct.
Can you elaborate what other jobs require a permit and why it's important that the contractor request the permit and not the homeowner?
Yeah. The main thing is, we really want people to realize that when you get a building permit, or a contractor gets the building permit, who's responsible for it, we're there to protect you. We're not there to protect the contractor. We're there to make sure your wiring's done right, your plumbing's done right, your gas piping's done right. If there's construction, structural work is done right. This is all to protect the customer. These are what we consider, a lot of these are life safety issues. A lot of things, we don't consider these and don't even think about them during our day-to-day lifetime, whether or not, you know, somebody's gonna get electrocuted from something in a light socket or touching a light chain, you know, if something's not bonded or grounded correctly. Most people don't worry about their roofs collapsing on them unless there's 5-6 feet of snow on a bad year. So these are all things that we look at all the time during our inspections. During our inspection process is a good time for customers to realize before they start releasing money or payments during the construction cycle to make sure they get their inspections first. Because if something's not done right, you've got a stopgap there before you start paying money for something. You get too far, too deep into the project, and the contractor or whoever the person that may be that you hired that you thought was a good contract walks away with your money.
Now, how often do your inspectors go out to inspect a home improvement job and find that the work isn't up to standard and they stop the work?
Generally before any conceal work is done. So if it's something that's ongoing before something gets concealed, whether it's drywall or ceilings are being put up, if it's something structural, let's say even if you're starting from something with maybe an addition, we look at the soils, the footings, the foundations before they get backfilled. We look at the placement before that even starts for zoning. And these are, again, these are all steps that are in place to help ensure that the project is going along correctly.
That's right. Now, a lot of, you know, complaints that we see, either the contractor did not pull the permit, or they claim that they were licensed and registered and the consumer never verified it. So it's important that consumers verify that that license number that they have on their business card or on the contract is actually theirs. Does your office verify that?
Yes.
Oh, you do
in our
verify,
system,
okay.
we have a contractor database that we run through and we verify those. Generally, we always require that the contractor come in, take the permit, so we can look at on their license, the picture is the matching license to go with the contractor that's filing for it, so we make sure we don't have a contractor that's selling his license out to other contractors to use. We've had that problem before. So the state has looked at putting the pictures on the contractor's license. So you should be able to look at their license and see that that is them that's on the license.
Now, when a contractor convinces the homeowner to get the permit in their name, does your office offer any intervention or ask, why are you requesting the permit and not the contractor?
In Springfield, we do. We try to tell
Okay,
people
good.
and tell them the rights. If you have a contractor that's pushing you to take the permit, that should be a red flag right off the bat. There's an issue there. The contractors know their responsibility. The building code, the Mass General laws requires a contractor be responsible to take their permits. So generally, anytime we see somebody being pushed to take the permit out for them, and a lot of times say, well, you know, this is my Uncle Joe, or I know this guy real well and I don't worry about it. You should still worry about it. It's your money, you work hard for it, you want a project to go well. At the end of the day, if you take the permit out and the contractor doesn't take the permit out, you are responsible. You're going to be considered as the contractor responsible for all the issues that are there.
Another concern that consumers or homeowners should have is if they don't do the work correctly and don't abide by the rules, and they hire or they pay someone who's a family member who's a handyman, and they do the work substandard or shoddy, and they have to sell the home. Let's say it's electrical work, and a family member thinks they know enough to do the job, and now they're ready to sell their home, and that issue comes up, it's going to come back to bite them.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's another reason why we encourage them to make sure that they follow the rules. It's only to protect them. But consumers always, you know, want to find an easy way out, and they don't realize that long term it may end up costing them a lot more money.
Oh, absolutely. You have to look at the liability in your insurance. If you've done something without permits, illegal wiring, gas piping, you're putting in wood stoves without permits, you have to be careful whether or not your insurance company will even pay for some kind of disaster.
Is there a permit required for a pellet stove? I know a lot of
Yes.
consumers are converting to pellet stoves to save because they're economical.
Yeah.
So it is required.
Yeah, pretty much you need a permit for just about
For just about
everything nowadays. But it's, you know, but that's all good. I mean, it's based on consumer protection. It's not a revenue source for the cities. A lot of people think it's just, a lot of times it's the government looking for a revenue source on. And if we're following the permitting laws and the contractor's laws, are taking the permits to install a wood pellet stove or the roof for your siding for you, they're bearing the cost of that. So it's not on the taxpayers of the city.
And Steve, what are the fees for the permits?
A lot of fees are there. Are base fee, simple fees for roofing, siding, roofing windows. We have a $75 fee that pays for the permit and it pays for the inspection. So if you look at it from
And peace of mind.
and a peace of mind, it's self-insurance of you know, that things have been vetted. I mean, the inspector's not going to actually climb up on the roof and look at the nailing pattern on it. We're not going to do that, but we're going to ensure that at least that process has been taken care of. You're now in line what's requirement for under the permitting, for that people can have some kind of access to come back to under the state guarantee fund if there's a default by the home improvement contractor. Your rights haven't been waived. Versus if you take the permit out for the contractor, you're on your own.
Right. So can you elaborate a little bit more about the guarantee fund? Because most consumers don't realize that that is an option for them, but it requires either an arbitration award or a court judgment. Am I correct?
Correct.
And then they can tap into the guarantee fund if they're eligible.
Right. The contractors, the home improvement contractors, the fee that they pay goes to the state, and that goes into the home guarantee fund for exactly that purpose. If there's a default by that contractor that is licensed by the state, you have some kind of remedy at the very end to tap into that if needed.
That's great. That's great. Most consumers do not know that, and we mention that to them when they contact our office, and you know, they go to court and they win a judgment and they feel like, well, I haven't been paid, what do I do now? And then
Right.
we refer them to the guarantee fund, and that's why it's so important, again, and I can't emphasize it enough as you just did, that consumers hire a contractor who's licensed and registered with the state, and that they verify that, not just go by their word. It's important that they take the time and do their homework. You know, if you're going to have homework done on your home, it requires you, the homeowner, to do the homework first before the work begins
Yeah.
on your home. And that's how I usually explain it to them.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not just to pick up the phone book or look at a referral and just call and say, come and do this job. This is what I need done. Verify, verify, verify. It's so important.
Yeah, I mean, you use your local building department, whether it's Springfield or other departments, call the inspectors down and say, you know, I have a question on that. Or you can look at some of your local associations, like the Home Builders Association, the local Home Builders Association with the Remodeling Association. Find out if the guys are part of that association, if they have good representation or reputation. Any of your consumer
Offices, the Better Business
offices,
Bureau,
check
Consumer
with them.
Protection.
Yeah, your Business
Better
Bureau, and you
Business
can
Bureau,
you can speak that better than I can, and look to
And
see
the
if there's
Attorney
any
General's
complaints.
office, too, they can
Attorney General's
contact.
office, yeah.
Now, can consumers call your office and ask, Have you had any complaint, or do you have any issues with this contractor? And give you the name of a contractor. I can't identify anyone, but can they call your office first and say, I'm about to, I'm considering hiring this contractor. Have you had any complaints against them?
We won't say if the contractor's good or bad, but we will say, yes, we've had complaints against this contractor. There's ongoing disputes against this contractor. So
Okay.
at that point, we don't
That's
get
a good
into the
source.
devil's of the
That's a
details.
good resource for consumers then.
Absolutely, because on the way we look at it, we're consumer protection. We're there to protect not the consumer that's there.
Okay.
Not there to protect the contractor. The contractors that are good, that know, they know that the building department's there to actually work with them, keep them, make sure their work is up to snuff, keep on top of what the new building codes are, because they're very tough to stay on top of. We have a hard enough time. We have continuing education all the time to stay on top of the building codes. So the guys that are out there, contractors, trying to make a living, it's hard to stay on top of it. So they do look to us as a resource too also.
That's good. That's good to know. Anything else you want to elaborate on that you feel consumers should be made aware of during this segment?
Yeah, our departments, whether it's the city of Springfield or any of the towns around here, your building department, your code enforcement department is an asset. We're here for the public. Utilize us. If you see something, call.
That's good.
That's what we're here for.
Now, one final question. I should have asked you this before, Steve. Does your office, if you know there's a contractor or not a contractor, or say a handyman that's doing work, pretending to be a reputable home improvement contractor, legit, does your office order or issue a cease and desist letter to them?
Yes, we will issue a
Okay.
cease and desist. In some cases, we can issue some pretty heavy-duty fines.
Well, that's great.
Non-criminal disposition tickets, but we can write up to $500 to $1,000 in some cases.
Wow. So again, consumers need to contact your office. Contact us. We'll know where to send them to, or contact your office and you know where to send them to if they have a legitimate complaint that they should file with our office and they need mediation services. So this is great service that your office provides. I really am grateful that you took the time to come here today to explain this to us and to our viewers, and I hope that other cities and towns that are watching will use it as a learning tool. Again, we're a consumer toolbox because we want to provide consumers with the tools that they need. So thank you so much for
Well,
coming,
thanks for
Steve. I
having me.
really appreciate it.
I've got a
Thank
great
you.
staff in Springfield
That's wonderful.
ready to do
And
the
I
right
know
thing.
they're great. I know they're very
Yeah.
committed to the job and to the city. So consumers should take advantage of the resources.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Well, I hope you found today's program informative and empowering. If you liked what you heard and you want to stay informed, I encourage you to follow us on Twitter at Springfield LCP. You can also find many resources and information on our website at springfieldcityhall.com. In fact, Steve's office is also on the city website. But most importantly, you may reach us at 787-6437 if you wish to ask a question or speak to a mediator. Thank you so much for watching the Consumer Toolbox. I'll see you again next month.